предлагает закрыть воздушное пространство над Украиной.
Those remarks from a top Russian general appear to signal a shift in strategy, or at least in messaging. Russia saying the first phase of its military plan is now complete, and it's focusing on, quote, liberating the Donbass region in the east. 1 month into Russia's full-scale invasion, and NATO estimates between 7,000 and 15,000 Russian troops have been killed. Earlier this week, the alliance committed to bolstering its force along the eastern flank.
Rather than driving NATO apart, the West is now stronger and more united than it has ever been. Russia wanted less of a NATO presence on its border, but now he has a stronger presence, a larger presence, with over 100,000 American troops here, along with all the other members of NATO.
President Biden reinforced the message of a united NATO during his address in Warsaw, Poland last night, adding that as a defensive alliance, NATO has never sought Russia's demise. It's a position General Joseph Ralston knows well. He's a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander for Europe from 2000 to 2003. He also served as commander for the U.S. European Command and was once the second highest-ranking military officer in the United States. Joseph Ralston, General Ralston, joins me this morning. General, nice to see you.
Thank you very much, and happy to be with you today.
We're now more than a month into the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. How would you assess Russia's military advance in terms of where we are at so far? Because as we said off the top there, Russia seems to suggest it's heading into a new phase.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to make that assessment, and I'll tell you why. You've always got the fog of war, and even for people who are there, it's very difficult to determine exactly what's going on. It's even more complicated this time because there have been very active information operations or informational warfare on both sides. President Zelensky has done an outstanding job in motivating the Ukrainian people and in bringing the West together. And President Putin is giving an entirely different story to the Russian people about how this operation is going according to plan. Trying to figure all that out is very, very difficult. But obviously, in my view, things have not gone well for the Russians. The Ukrainians have been far more united, I think, than the Russian military anticipated. And that's why you're seeing all of these conflicting statements come out of Russia.
You've previously said that it's not just about Ukraine. How concerned are you that Russia could shift its focus beyond Ukraine and launch an attack on a neighboring NATO country, for instance?
Yeah, that has been my primary concern all along. I do believe this is about more than Ukraine. And I'm very concerned about the Baltic states. They are members of NATO, and that is a whole different ballgame if he tries to do anything at all. I'm very concerned that he will want a corridor through Lithuania to Kaliningrad, and what's NATO's reaction going to be to that? And those are, I think, are the very, very serious issues, in addition to what is all of the humanitarian and destruction that's going on in Ukraine.
And when you see NATO respond, because you've led this alliance before, by increasing its battle groups in Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, and Bulgaria, is that the kind of response, military response, you would want to see from NATO at this point?
I think it's very, very important that we, in fact, reinforce the Baltic states and those that are most at risk on the eastern frontier. And I think Secretary General Stoltenberg has done an outstanding job, and along with General Walters that are there. I have nothing but admiration for them and for what they are doing. I am concerned that we've got to keep NATO together strongly, both politically and militarily. And I'm concerned, as of yesterday, the Turkish foreign minister, in fact, invited the Russian oligarchs to come to Turkey and do business. That's not something that we need from the alliance right now.
Yeah. What did you make, General, of President Biden's comments yesterday, the controversial comments, I'll call them that, right at the end of his speech, where he suggested that Biden needed to go, and that statement was later clarified by White House officials, saying that he didn't mean a regime change, but that he did want Putin to stop, obviously. What did you make of the potential risk of those comments?
I think those comments were unfortunate. And I think we get in real trouble when we start trying to tell other countries who their leadership should be. President Obama made a mistake, I think, when he said Bashar Assad needed to go or would go. And here we are a decade plus later, and Bashar Assad is still in power and President Obama is gone. So those are not helpful statements.
NATO and the U.S. Have repeatedly talked about the risks of a no-fly zone, something that NATO is not willing to do. What other steps could NATO be taking to help further deter Russia, given that seems to be right off the table?
Well, I think that we need to be providing whatever equipment that we can. We need to be providing spare parts for the MiGs, for example. I personally think that a no-fly zone is a bad idea unless you're willing to declare war on Russia. In order to enforce a no-fly zone, you have to eliminate ground-based surface-to-air missiles, which the Russians are manning inside Ukraine and also across the border in Russia. If that's what you want to do, then go ahead and declare war on Russia and do it. Don't let some poor lieutenant in an F-22 have to make that decision as to whether you're going to start the war with Russia or not.
I want to ask you a little bit about the alliance, because you led some of the efforts back in '99, I think, to bring in 3 different nations, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. And you oversaw the process to invite 7 countries that joined in 2002. And of course, now there are conversations, General, about Finland and Sweden, who seem increasingly open to the idea of joining the alliance. What do you make of that, and how significant is that?
Well, first of all, that's a decision for the Finns and the Swedes.
Sure.
NATO has never recruited any country. NATO has said if you are interested in being a member of NATO, you've got to meet 5 criteria. You have to be a functioning democracy, a free market economy, civilian control of your military, no border disputes with your neighbors, and willing to accept NATO doctrine and procedures. And then all 30 members of NATO would have to agree the joining of NATO. So that's clearly a decision, as I say, for the Finns and the Swedes. I think most people would say that both countries certainly meet the criteria. I know from personal experience that both countries are exceedingly serious about their defense. They have very competent forces. They have very good equipment. And that would be something that would be a positive for NATO. But again, that's a decision for the Finns and the Swedes to make.
We're now more than a month into this, and certainly President Biden said yesterday that we need to prepare ourselves for the long fight ahead. Do you agree with that? What will you be watching for in the weeks to come?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And again, we've got to do everything we can to make sure that President Putin understands that the seriousness with which NATO understands the situation, and we need to be putting our forces forward. That's something that we would not have done had he not done this horrible attack against Ukraine. But I think we need to be in this for the long term. And I think, when I was in Europe, we had over 300,000 American forces in NATO. And today we're down around 100,000. We're going to have to increase our forces there. We're going to have to pay more attention to it. And I do believe we're in for the long term.
And presumably, too, General, that means that countries like Canada will have to potentially increase their military spending as well.
Well, that's obviously a decision for the Canadian people to do. Yeah. But yes, I think all of the NATO nations are going to have to up their game.
Okay. General Ralston, so nice to meet you. Thank you for giving the time to Canada this morning. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you for having given me the opportunity.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.